You know that moment when you're lying in bed early in the morning, everyone is asleep, the house is silent, and out of nowhere your mind starts asking questions that you didn't ask it to ask. Questions like, what is all this for? What is the point of waking up every day, working, chasing things, suffering, losing people, getting old, and in the end dying? Is there any real purpose to all this, or are we just passing time until it's over? These questions appear in the quietest hours, when there is no distraction, when there's no social media to go on, when it's just you and the ceiling. And at these times, we discover something about ourselves that is impossible to ignore. We need meaning. It really needs it. You need to know that life is not just an absurd accident in a universe that doesn't care about us. And this is exactly where most people stop. He stops because he is afraid of the answer. Stop because you think there is no answer. It stops because someone once told her that asking these types of questions is for weak people, for people who need a crutch, for people who didn't have the courage to accept that life is meaningless and move on. But John Lennox didn't stop. He never stopped. He took these questions and took them to the most rigorous places on the planet, to Oxford, to Cambridge, for televised debates with the biggest atheists in the world. He took these questions from dawn into the light of day and said, let's examine them. Let's see if there's an answer. We will follow the evidence as far as it goes, whatever the cost. And what he found changed everything. But before I tell you what he found, I need to tell you something important. Because if I don't say this now, you might hear everything I'm going to say and not let it in. Here's the thing. I know you probably already have an opinion about Christianity. Maybe you are a Christian and are here seeking strengthening. Maybe you're an atheist and are here out of curiosity or even to disagree. Maybe you're in a place of doubt, not really knowing what you believe in, feeling like the ground is a little shaky beneath your feet. Whatever your place, I only ask one thing. Listen honestly, not with automatic agreement, not with automatic rejection. Honestly, let the arguments sink in before judging them, and in the end, do what you want with them. But at least listen. Because what Lennox discovered after more than 50 years of investigation is something that modern culture works very hard to hide from you. And what he discovered is this. The Christian faith is not what you were told it was. It is not blind faith. It is not ignorance disguised as spirituality. It is not a refuge for those who do not have the courage to face reality. The Christian faith is possibly the most examined, most tested, and most attacked intellectual position in the history of humanity. And she's still standing. Not because no one tried to take it down, but because everyone tried and no one succeeded. And now I'll show you why. Let's start with something you feel but maybe have never stopped to think about. Something so present in your life that it is almost invisible, like the air you breathe. Morality. You know certain things are wrong. Not because someone taught you, not because it's written in a law. You know because you know. When you see a child being mistreated, something inside you revolts. When you see someone being humiliated for no reason, something inside you says, this shouldn't happen. When you hear a story of brutal injustice, something inside you burns. This reaction is not cultural. It is not learned. It is there before any education, any indoctrination, any external influence. It's as if it came from the factory, as if it had been installed in you before you were born. And now think with me. If the universe is just matter, if there is nothing but atoms moving through space following the blind laws of physics, if life is a chemical accident on a random planet, if consciousness is just an illusion created by the brain to help us survive. If all this is true, then where does this moral law come from? Where does this sense of right and wrong that seems to be engraved in the soul of every human being come from? The answer that materialism offers is evolution. Natural selection programmed us to feel empathy because empathetic groups survive better than groups without empathy. Okay, let's accept that for a minute. If morality is just an evolutionary trick, then it is not real. It's useful, yes, but it's not true. It's a survival tool like claws or teeth, and survival tools are not right or wrong. They're efficient or inefficient. If morality isn't true, if it's just a sensation produced by evolution, then saying that torturing a child is wrong is no fundamentally different from saying that broccoli tastes bad. It's preference. It's not true. But no human being lives like that. Absolutely none. The most convinced atheist of the world is outraged when it sees injustice. He doesn't think, oh, that's just a chemical reaction that evolution programmed into my brain with no objective meaning. No. He feels that it is wrong. Really wrong. Objectively wrong. Wrong in any universe, in any time, in any culture. And by feeling this, he is confirming exactly what Christianity says. There is a real, objective, universal moral law which does not depend on human opinion. And if there is a law, there is a lawgiver. Just as physical laws do not right themselves, moral laws do not right themselves. And Lennox goes deeper. He says, This moral law that you feel within you is one of the most powerful evidences of the existence of God, because it does not fit into materialism. Materialism cannot explain why you feel injustice is wrong. It can describe the mechanism, neurons firing, dopamine, serotonin, but it can't explain why the mechanism exists. Why would evolution go to the trouble of creating a species that cares about justice? Justice does not help with survival. It often gets in the way. The guy who fights for justice often dies because of it. This is the opposite of what natural selection should produce. And yet, it exists. In every culture, at all times, in every human being. Lennox looks at this and says, this is a clue, a gigantic track, a clue that points to something beyond matter. Something that planted within you a sense of right and wrong that transcends biology. And that something is what Christians call God. And if that's already strong, wait until you hear what comes now. Because we are going to leave the interior of the human being and look outside, far away, for the entire universe. Have you ever stopped to think about why the universe exists, not how it works? Science explains this very well. Gravity, electromagnetism, quantum physics, relativity. Science describes how it works with incredible precision. But science doesn't answer why there is something rather than nothing. Why does matter exist? Why are there laws? Why is there a universe capable of being studied by minds capable of studying it? This is the most fundamental question a human being can ask, and materialism has no answer for it. It can describe what happened after the Big Bang, it can calculate the age of the cosmos, it can map the cosmic microwave background. But it cannot explain why the Big Bang happened. It cannot explain why laws of physics exist. It cannot explain why these laws are expressible in mathematical language. It cannot explain why there is something rather than nothing. And here comes something that is absolutely fascinating. A discovery in modern physics that left scientists around the world scratching their heads. The fine-tuning of the universe. The universe works based on physical constants. These are numerical values that determine how everything behaves. And what physicists have discovered in recent decades is that these values are calibrated with a precision that defies any notion of chance. I'm going to give you concrete examples because I want you to understand the scope of what I'm talking about. The gravitational force. If it were just a little stronger, the stars would burn too quickly to support life. If it were even a little dimmer, stars would never form. And when I say a little, I'm talking about a variation of 1 part in 10 to the power of 40. That's a 1 followed by 40 zeros. It's a number so big that the human mind can't even visualize it. The strong nuclear force. If it were 2% stronger, all the hydrogen in the universe would have converted to helium shortly after the Big Bang. No hydrogen, no water, no life. If it were a little weaker, no elements other than hydrogen would exist. Without carbon, without oxygen, without anything that makes up life, the cosmological constant. This is perhaps the most impressive of all. It determines the expansion rate of the universe. If it were changed by 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, an absurdly, unimaginably small number, the universe would have expanded too quickly for any structure to form, or it would have collapsed in on itself billions of years ago. And it's not a constant. Not 2. There are dozens of constants, all calibrated simultaneously, all needing to be exactly where they are for the universe to allow life. The probability of all this happening by chance is so small that mathematicians literally cannot express it in any meaningful way. It's as if you blindfolded your eyes, spun 100 times, threw a needle into space and hit a target 1 millimeter in diameter on the other side of the observable universe, on the first try. And Lennox, who is a mathematician, who understands probabilities like few in the world do, looks at these numbers and says something that is both simple and devastating. This doesn't look like an accident. This looks like someone made purpose. This seems like someone wanted us to exist. And I know there is a popular answer to this, the multiverse. The idea that there are infinite universes with different constants, and we are simply in one that works. Seems to solve the problem, right? But there is a detail that almost no one mentions when presenting this idea. There is no empirical evidence that other universes exist. None. It is a pure theoretical hypothesis. It cannot be tested. It cannot be observed. It cannot be measured. It is an idea that was created specifically to avoid the conclusion that the universe was designed. And then the irony becomes almost comical. Because the same people who accuse Christians of having blind faith are postulating the existence of trillions of invisible, undetectable, and unverifiable universes, so as not to have to admit that the evidence points to a creator. Who is really exercising blind faith? Lennox doesn't ask this arrogantly. He asks with genuine curiosity. Because he really wants to know, why is it so hard for some people to follow the evidence when it points in the direction of God? What happens inside us that makes us prefer to invent trillions of invisible universes rather than accepting the possibility of a creator? And the answer, according to Lennox, is not intellectual. It's moral. People don't reject God because the evidence is weak. They reject it because if God exists, that changes everything. If God exists, life has purpose. If life has purpose, I have responsibility. If I have responsibility, I'm not the center of my own universe. And for many people, this is too high a price. But let's continue, because until now we have talked about philosophy and science. And Christianity has strong arguments in these areas, as you have just seen. But Christianity does something that no other religion or philosophy does. It bets everything on a specific historical event, an event that can be investigated, verified, tested. And that event is the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. And here's where the conversation gets really serious, because if the resurrection didn't happen, Christianity doesn't work. It is not a secondary issue. It's the center of everything. The Apostle Paul said it clearly. If Christ has not been resurrected, our faith is useless, and we are the most pitiful people in the world. Paul was not protecting the faith. He was putting it on the table and saying, if this didn't happen, throw it all away. You can leave. It's not worth it. This is an extraordinary stance for a religious leader. Imagine the founder of any other religion saying, if this specific event didn't happen, my entire religion is rubbish. Nobody does that. But Paul did. Because he knew the resurrection was verifiable. He knew the witnesses were alive, and he trusted the evidence so much that he put everything on the line. And what is this evidence? Let's look carefully. The tomb was empty. And this is recognized by the overwhelming majority of historians, including those who are not Christians. Jesus' body was not there. If it had been, the history of Christianity would have ended in the first week. Jewish religious leaders wanted to put an end to the Christian movement. The Roman Empire wanted to maintain order. If the body had been available, they would have shown it and resolved the problem in no time. But they didn't show it, because they couldn't, because the body wasn't there, and alternative explanations don't hold water. Did the disciples steal the body? These same disciples who had just fled in terror when Jesus was arrested? Peter, who denied knowing Jesus 3 times because a maid asked if he was his follower? These guys suddenly turned into brave warriors who took on trained Roman guards, rolled a ton of boulder, stole a body, hid it so well no one ever found it, and then spent the rest of their lives preaching something they knew was a lie, and not just preaching. Dying for it, being tortured, being arrested, being executed, without any of them, at any point, confessing to fraud? This is not unlikely. It's psychologically impossible. Groups of people do not maintain lies under torture. Someone always breaks it. Always. But none of the disciples broke. None. The apparitions, multiple people in multiple places at multiple times, claim to have seen Jesus alive after the crucifixion. Paul lists appearances to Peter, to the 12, to more than 500 people at once, to James, Jesus' brother, who did not believe in him during his lifetime, and to Paul himself, who was an active persecutor of Christians before becoming the greatest missionary in history. And here, we need to deal with the most common objection, hallucination. They were emotionally shaken. They saw what they wanted to see. Okay, but psychiatry is clear about this. Hallucinations are individual experiences. No 2 people have the same hallucination at the same time, much less 500. Non-AC hallucinations yesterday in a group. They do not spread by contagion, and they do not produce permanent personality transformations in dozens of people simultaneously. The transformation of the disciples. This to me is one of the strongest pieces of evidence, because there is no way to manufacture this. These men who fled, who hid, who cried in fear, suddenly became the boldest people of the first century. They faced the Sanhedrin. They faced Rome. They preached in public squares knowing that they could be arrested at any time. And when they were arrested, they continued preaching. When they were flogged, they left prison rejoicing because they had been considered worthy to suffer for the name of Jesus. What kind of experience turns cowards into martyrs? What type of event produces this change? An illusion? A collective mistake? A stolen body? None of this is enough. Something happened to these people. Something real. Something that changed everything. And there is one more detail that few people notice, but which is too revealing to ignore. The first witnesses to the resurrection in the gospel accounts are women. Mary Magdalene and other women went to the tomb and found it empty. They were the ones who saw the angels. They were the ones who ran to tell the disciples. And in first century Jewish culture, women's testimony had no legal value. If you were going to make up a story to convince people in that culture, the last thing you would do is put women as the main witnesses. This would completely weaken your case. Unless you weren't making anything up, unless he was simply telling what happened, how it happened, without caring if the report was convenient or not. The texts of the New Testament also deserve attention. Because many people think that the Bible is an old book full of errors that has been copied and recopied so many times that it has lost any connection with the original. That's what people think. But that's not what the data shows. The New Testament has more manuscript support than any other ancient text, more than 25,000 manuscripts in different languages. To compare, Homer's Iliad, which is the second best preserved ancient text, has around 1,800 copies. The Annals of Tacitus, 20 copies. Plato's works, 7. And the oldest manuscripts of the New Testament are extremely close to the events. Fragment P52 of the Gospel of John dates from approximately 125 AD, 40 years after the original writing. Compare this with Tacitus, whose oldest manuscript is from the 9th century, more than 700 years later. If someone doubts the reliability of the New Testament, that person, to be consistent, needs to doubt absolutely everything we know about the ancient world, because no text has even a fraction of the support that the New Testament has. And yet, no one questions Tacitus. Nobody questions Plato. But when it comes to the New Testament, suddenly the standard of evidence changes completely. Lennox points out this inconsistency precisely, and it is revealing, because it shows that the rejection of the New Testament is not based on evidence. It is based on presupposition. People don't reject the text because the evidence is weak. They reject it because they don't like what the text says. Now, there is an objection that always appears when we talk about resurrection and miracles. And the objection is this: miracles are impossible. The laws of nature do not allow the dead to come back to life. Full stop. And this objection seems very strong. It looks scientific. It seems rational. But Lennox shows that she is none of those things. It is a philosophical presupposition disguised as a scientific conclusion. I'll explain it to you in a simple way. The laws of nature describe what normally happens when no external agent intervenes. The law of gravity says that a ball thrown upwards will fall. But if I catch the ball before it falls, I haven't violated the law of gravity. I acted within the system. The law remains valid. But the law doesn't stop me from acting. Likewise, if there is a God who created the universe and natural laws, that God has full capacity to act within his creation in ways that go beyond the normal course of nature. To say that miracles are impossible is to say, before any investigation, that God does not exist. It's putting the conclusion before the evidence. It's deciding the result before doing the experiment. And that, as Lennox likes to remind you, is exactly the opposite of what science teaches you to do. The question is not whether the laws of nature permit resurrection. The question is whether there is a God with power over the laws of nature. And this is the question that is being investigated. Using the conclusion as a premise is circular reasoning, and circular reasoning is not science. It's prejudice. And here Lennox makes a twist that takes many people by surprise. He shows that when you put it all together, the fine-tuning, the intelligibility of the universe, the objective morality, the historical evidence for the resurrection, what you have is not a weak case that requires a leap of faith. What you have is a powerful cumulative case that points in a clear direction, and the direction is God. What about atheism? What does atheism offer on the other side? Let's be honest. Atheism asks you to believe that the universe arose out of nothing, without a cause. That life arose from dead matter without direction. That consciousness, your ability to think, love, create, dream, is just an accidental byproduct of chemical reactions. That morality is not real. It is just a useful illusion. That love isn't real. It's just dopamine. That beauty is not real. It is just a neurological reaction. That the meaning you feel in life isn't real. It's just a comforting fantasy. And at the end of it all, the universe will cool down, everything will die, and absolutely nothing will have mattered. Lennox looks at this painting and says something that always gets me. This requires enormous faith, not a small faith, a gigantic faith. Faith in which reason emerged from the irrational. Faith in that life emerged from the lifeless. Faith in which consciousness emerged from the unconscious. Faith in which morality emerged from the amoral. Faith in which meaning emerged from meaninglessness. Each of these steps is a leap in the dark, and when you put them all together, atheism requires a much, much greater faith than Christianity. And the most telling paradox is that the atheist cannot live up to what he says he believes. He says life has no meaning, but he lives as if it does. He says that morality is an illusion, but he is outraged by injustice. He says love is chemistry, but he cries when he loses someone. He says that the truth is not accessible, because our minds are just survival machines, not real machines, but he spends his entire life searching for the truth. The atheist's life contradicts the atheist's philosophy, and when your life contradicts your philosophy, the problem is not in life, it's in philosophy. And now I want to talk to you in a more direct way, because everything I've said so far are arguments, and arguments are important. But I know there are people listening to this now who don't need any more arguments, need something else. She needs someone to look at her pain and say, I see you. I know what you're feeling. And there is hope. Because maybe you're going through something difficult right now. Maybe you lost someone. Maybe you're in a place so dark that you can't see a way out. Maybe you've heard so many times that God doesn't exist, that life has no meaning, that you're just a cosmic accident, that you've started to believe it. And believing that hurts. It hurts in a way that no philosophical argument can describe. Because when you believe that life has no meaning, every pain becomes heavier. Each loss gets more cruel. Every day gets more difficult. And what I want to tell you, what Lennox spends his whole life telling you, is that there is another possibility. A possibility that does not ignore pain, that doesn't pretend that everything is fine, that doesn't offer easy answers to difficult questions, but it offers something that atheism can never offer: hope with a foundation. The God of Christianity is not a distant God who watches us suffer from afar. It is not an indifferent God who created the universe and walked away. The God of Christianity is a God who entered into suffering. What people did. He felt hungry, tired, sad, lonely. Who cried. Who was betrayed by a close friend. That he was abandoned by the people he loved most. That he was tried by a corrupt court. That he was tortured. Who died. The cross is not an ornament. The cross is the most radical declaration ever made about who God is. It's God saying, I'm not far away. I'm here, in the midst of pain, in the darkness, in the deepest place that life can take you. I'm there, because I've been there. I know what it is. And the resurrection is the promise that pain is not the end, that death does not have the last word, that there is something on the other side. Not a fantasy, not empty positive thinking, a reality, as real as the empty tomb, as real as the hundreds of witnesses, as real as the transformation of those men who were willing to die for something they saw with their own eyes. And do you know what atheism offers in the face of suffering? Silence. You can say that the pain is meaningless. You can say the universe doesn't care. It can say that when you die, you will simply cease to exist and nothing will matter. And maybe that seems honest. Maybe it looks brave. But when you're at rock bottom, when the pain is too great, when you can't breathe because of so much anguish, nothing matters is not courage. It's abandonment. It's telling a drowning person that water has no meaning. Christianity says something else. It says the water is real, the pain is real, the drowning is real. But he says there is someone reaching out, someone who has been underwater, someone who knows what it's like to not be able to breathe, and that promises to take you away there. Lennox understood this not just with his head, but with his life. And what he defends after 50 years in the most skeptical environments in the world is not a silly, simplistic, bumper-to-bumper Christianity. It is a Christianity that has survived every attack the human mind has managed to devise. A Christianity that has been examined by philosophers, tested by scientists, investigated by historians, and which continues to stand, not because no one tried to take him down, but because everyone has tried, and the evidence refuses to budge. And at the center of it all, at the heart of this entire structure of evidence and arguments, there is no theory, there is no philosophy, there is no list of rules, there is a person. Jesus didn't say, I found the way for you to follow. He said, I am the way. I didn't say I discovered the truth for you to learn. He said, I am the truth. I didn't say I teach how to have a life. He said, I am life. No other leader in human history has made such a statement. And the resurrection is what gives credibility to this statement, because anyone can say anything. But only one person in history came back from death to prove that he was serious. And the question that remains is for you, not for me, not for Lennox, for you. Are you willing to investigate? Don't accept it blindly. Don't reject it with your eyes closed. Investigating, honestly, with courage, with the willingness to go where the evidence leads, even if destiny surprises you, even if destiny takes you to a place you never imagined going, because blind faith accepts without thinking. But the faith that Lennox defends thinks so much, investigates so much, examines so much, that in the end, it is no longer a leap in the dark, it's a step into the light. A reasoned step, a step based on real evidence, and the evidence is real. They always have been. The question has never been whether they exist. The question was always whether you would stop and look. Now it's up to you. If this touched something inside you, leave a like. If you have a question, comment below. If someone came to mind while you were listening to this, someone who needs to hear it, someone who is going through a difficult time, someone who thinks that being a Christian means turning off your brain, share it with them. It may be the most important thing you do for her today. Subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one.